Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. We're back in New York after a big day on Capitol Hill. Big night for President Trump addressing the nation and a deeply divided Congress about the state of our union. It was an inspiring speech filled with emotional moments honoring heroes, America's fallen, freedom fighters, and more. He made a call for bipartisan unity that was met at times with resistance from many Democrats in the room. We're going to break all that down for you throughout the hour. But we begin with the president's tribute to patriotism and the American people.
The United States is a compassionate nation.
Ticking through all the economic headlines. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that. It was, to me, it was a bit of a laundry list, but that's how these things are. I don't see how much follow through there is on some of the policy items that you typically see in a State of the Union, which lays out an agenda so that the president can hit the road and keep selling something that he wants to try to pass this year. It wasn't that kind of a speech. But certainly the people who watched it felt good about it. But if you're a Democrat and you watched it, you didn't feel good about it. Just like as Republicans watching President Obama didn't feel good about his. It's almost the mirror image of the last 8 years.
Yet, yes, but I thought he did make a few overtures to the Democrats, but it's almost like they didn't see it, maybe because they didn't want to see it, Kimberly.
Well, that was the part that we were talking about earlier when we were kind of reviewing it, where you saw that he was talking about employment numbers and everything in the Black community, and you were looking basically the Congressional Black Caucus didn't acknowledge it or clap or anything like that. So, of course, there's going to be some partisan reaction that you're going to see manifest itself.
Well, there's Nancy, not happy.
Not happy. But overall, I thought that there was a lot in this speech that was great for, both sides, whether you were a Democrat or whether you were a Republican. I think it was a very uplifting speech. It was about America, in my opinion, united, not divided. And he certainly had a lot of tremendous material to work with in terms of the accomplishments that he's been able to make as it relates to the economy and national security. And my favorite part, by the way, were the personal stories that really resonated with me.
I agree. I think that was the best part, Juan. Did you have a favorite part? Can you name one thing you liked about it?
One thing I liked about it?
Besides the end.
That was it. It took a long time to get to the good part, which was the end.
Yeah.
No, I thought, you know what? I expected that it was going to be conciliatory, to quote Greg. I thought it was going to be that he was extending the olive branch, saying, you know what, it's time for unity in a divided country. And he just didn't do it. He just disappointed me. I always think, you know what? Donald Trump is going to become presidential at this moment. He's finally going to put on the jacket and act like the president. And he always, I'm like Charlie Brown on the football with this guy. Because yesterday, what did he do? Instead of offering to unify the country, he doubles down on all of his talking points. It almost
But the talking points are about unity.
No, it wasn't.
No, they're about as Americans.
I mean,
you're missing the point.
No, even if it was about Americans, it would be about all Americans. Instead, what he's doing is...
Who did he leave out?
Well, let's take something like that was so dramatic, which is what he said about immigrants, right? And he has a family. They're a Black family whose children, I think 2 children, were killed by members of MS-13. And these people are crying. They're emotive. It was a little bit, oh boy, he had several people who were crying and upset. He used that quite strategically, as a dramatic reality show type of thing.
No one's ever done that before.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'll leave that to the audience to judge. It might be effective,
Every president does it, but go ahead.
Okay, but then you stop and you think, wait a minute, he's demonizing all illegal immigrants as if they're members of MS-13.
See, I think you're conflating it, and the American people did not conflate it. You also said that he didn't offer an olive branch, Juan. Let's play some of that olive branch right now when he's talking about infrastructure. Go ahead.
Infrastructure. America is a nation of builders. We built the Empire State Building in just 1 year. Isn't it a disgrace that it can now take 10 years just to get a minor permit approved for the building of a simple road? I am asking both parties to come together to give us safe, fast, reliable, and modern infrastructure that our economy needs and our people deserve.
So that's a major component of his 2018 agenda, Greg. And we believe the Democrats would get on board since they've been pushing for new infrastructure spending for the last 8 years.
Yeah, that's why it's like, I think that Democrats have to give him something there if people like me are aren't crazy about it. Like I hear infrastructure and I hear tons and tons and tons of spending that ends up not at infrastructure. It always goes somewhere else. So if I'm unhappy with it, at least the Democrats should be happy because I feel like I'm losing something. And speaking of just the Democrats, can we just talk briefly about that Richie Cunningham hologram?
Oh, you mean
Joe Kennedy Jr.?
Response to the State of the
Union.
Union.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about leadership, compared to Trump, that was a student council president. Where was Potsy and Ralph Malph? And the guy had enough chapstick on his face to cover the entire Olympic bobsled team.
I do want to get your quick reaction on AKA Potsy, and then I want to play another quick soundbite of the president saying he wants to reopen Gitmo. So let's listen to the Gitmo first, and then you can take on Potsy.
It's Richie.
Terrorists who do things like place bombs in civilian hospitals are evil. When possible, we have no choice but to annihilate them. When necessary, we must be able to detain and question them. But we must be clear. Terrorists are not merely criminals. They are unlawful enemy combatants.
That's significant.
Well, I've always been for keeping Gitmo open and for the purpose of it, which was to hold enemy combatants and to be able to question them. And there's been this constant tension of should you bring them to the United States where they would get all the due process afforded to people who are in the United States. And I think the answer to that should be no. Al-Baghdadi was a prisoner at Gitmo. He was released. Where did we catch him again? Or he's out there committing terrorist acts. So, but again, that's another point that is something you don't actually have to have in this speech, in an hour and 28-minute speech or 20-minute speech. You could have probably left that one out, but it was used to needle the other side. And so there's lots of things you could add in or not. I will say about Joe Kennedy, I think people are being really mean. Like, you are being mean? No, but everybody's being mean. Like, yeah. I don't like to go after somebody. I didn't like it when they went after Jindal or Marco Rubio or anybody who does these responses. It's a miserable thing. I actually think, though, that the Democrats had to be fairly happy with that.
Are they working on a car behind him?
Okay, and then there's that whole thing about like the sins of the uncle twice removed or something. But if you're a young Democrat and you feel like you cannot stand President Trump, and you saw that and you're like, there's hope for us. It's not Bernie Sanders. It's not Elizabeth Warren. I'm not saying that Joe Kennedy's going to run in 2020, but it was definitely a contrast.
But it's still the Kennedys. It's still another family. It's still like having the Clintons. You're just drawing from the same family.
Is it like having the Trumps, having the daughter in the White House?
Wait, is it Trump? No, you missed my point. Juan, listen. I'm talking about political dynasties. Trump's not a political dynasty.
Oh, no.
The Kennedys are.
They
keep
has
churning
his
him
sons,
out.
He has his daughter. He has...
You are completely missing my point on purpose.
You think? Okay.
Yes.
Let me just say,
you're deliberately being dense.
Okay, I'm dense. In regard to infrastructure, let me just say, the man laid out no plan. He didn't say, I'm going to find money here. I'm going to provide money here. He passed a tax
That's why you
plan
should like it.
That is, well, no,
you're a Democrat.
It's open for negotiations.
I think that you should, if you're saying, let's work on this infrastructure, Democrats, you want to do it, let's get to it. Chuck Schumer had an op-ed in the Washington Post yesterday saying, this guy is talking about private fees, maybe even raising gas taxes. Americans aren't going to respond well to that. Rural communities are going to be left out.
I agree with you.
Where is Trump on that? And when it comes to something like this business about Americans or dreamers too, how can you not see that as somehow making it as if you are the equal of a child that was brought here without any volition on their part?
We are.
Brought here as a child and is seeking the opportunity to fulfill their American dream.
So wait a second. They are more special than an American here. I'm a dreamer. Why can't I be a dreamer?
You are a dreamer.
I dream every day.
I
dream that someday you will see the light.
Yeah, I'll see the light in your eyes. Right.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of sexy.
Cue the music.
Well, but I'm just saying, this is more and more. This is how Trump distorts things, and then it gets heard by some people as, oh, well, it's so patriotic, so wonderful. In fact, what he's doing is putting down people and hurting even
the point of that line
people.
was that it has a double meaning, and it was meant to do exactly what's happening at this table.
No, it just exposes confirmation bias. You're hearing what you want to hear.
How did you see it?
That's what I meant.
Yeah, no,
but
I thought that, like I said, I thought that this was something that was incredible personal stories that all Americans can relate to, and it was more a message of unification. I didn't see in any way that he was trying to be divisive. He's saying that we can all grow and prosper together as a country, especially if we work cooperatively to achieve those ends. For example, like we've done with the economy.
All right.
And also, I think it's because we haven't heard that, it's strange to a lot of people. That's the tragedy, is that we think this is a weird idea that we're all Americans and that we're all dreamers, but that people think that's weird. That's sad.
Oh, no, you never heard Morning in America? Yeah, that's been around. Guess what? This optimism has been around. The problem is Donald Trump is speaking in a way that keeps putting down people, and you don't hear it.
No, I think you're reading minds.
Okay.
You're not
he's
hearing
putting
things.
people down. He's lifting people up.
Oh,
all right, we're going to continue to debate this, and we're going to have more personal stories as we continue to analyze the State of the Union up next.
Before we cover the speech some more, let's take a test. In terms of success, who would you rather be? This or this? It's good to start with perspective, given that most polls show widespread approval, upwards of 75% for Trump's speech. Still, the loyal opposition couldn't let go of their emotionally clouded bias. As Trump mentioned good news, they frowned. One clown even bolted when a patriotic chant broke out. And they speak of division. They sat when they should have stood, even for the flag. You think Americans didn't notice that? Trump placed that moment right in our faces. The Dems are confused. Trump's hitting all the high notes, and they don't know what to do. They're officially Dean Wormer from Animal House, always scowling at good news. Schumer looked like he didn't know whether to wind his watch or cry. Pelosi looks like she discovered her chauffeur had just broken wind. And when Trump called out socialism, half the Dems looked nervously toward the exits. Someone should have checked on Bernie Sanders. Did he expire from too much common sense? If the old saying is true, that progressivism is the fear that someone somewhere is making America look good, then this was a really bad night for progressives. That's why the media couldn't handle it either.
Immigration is his one opportunity to have a big success quickly. But I have to tell you, I think his rhetoric last night set things back, did not advance the ball forward.
Calling this a healing speech is almost like going on a diet by drinking a Diet Coke and eating a pizza. That's as much of a healing speech this was.
You tell me
What about the
that room is supposed to respond like this to the great dictator?
That was like her when he was running. So Trump set a trap for the Dems and the media that exposed their biases. But hey, everyone has a role to play, and in team sport politics, someone's got to be the loser. Pelosi, Schumer, the hapless media, they do it all so well. All right, Jesse, what do you make of do you think the Democrats should have been more gracious, or is this to be expected? Remember, there were people that were like this with Obama. I mean, there were people that shouted at Obama during one specific event that I can't remember.
You lie?
Yes, you lie.
Joe Wilson?
Yeah.
I just think the Democrats look like the media out of touch with the American people. If you have snap polls saying that they thought it was unifying, uplifting, and he deserves more credit for the good success of America, and then the media is saying it's gloomy, it's dark, it's poisonous, there's a huge disconnect. So you had Frank Luntz and Zogby, two big-time pollsters, both say home run, and if he continues to perform like this, the Republican Party may save the House and the Senate, and he's going to even win re-election. But not only did they not clap at some of those moments you just brought up about the rising wages and more jobs, they didn't clap when there was talk about a pathway to citizenship, lowering drug prices. They didn't clap about destroying ISIS. They didn't clap about the recovery of Steve Scalise, one of their own colleagues. Think about
Unbelievable.
that. So it's almost like you can applaud the success.
I think they did.
Steve Scalise.
Yeah, I think
Not
they did.
what I saw. Not what I saw. Check the tape.
All right.
But you can still applaud the success of America. But you don't have to agree with everything Trump says. It's almost like they care more about their party than they do about the country. Imagine if the Democrats didn't clap when we won gold medal in the Olympics because Trump was president. That's kind of the disconnect. But the president's done something very skillful here. He's so closely associated himself with the flag, with the country, and the economic success. When the Democrats root against him, they look like they're rooting against America. But he's also triangulated when it comes to manufacturing, infrastructure and trade that helps American workers. So the Democrats are in a tough position where they're boxed in. Are they going to choose what's good for their own base? Or are they going to follow Nancy and crying Chuck? And that's the question going into the midterms.
That's actually, I didn't even consider that, Dana. What the point Jesse says that he has aligned himself with patriotic symbols so that if you are against him, you're kind of against the flag. In a way, it's almost a parallel that if you were against President Obama, you're racist.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you align yourself with certain kinds of, in his case, identity politics. In this case, unification, patriotism.
Yeah, I was thinking when they didn't stand for, when the Democrats didn't stand, well, not, I shouldn't say didn't. I had a Democrat on my show today who did stand for rising wages, so I'll take it back. And they are lacking a message, though, and they don't have the bully pulpit. And they know that in their districts, all of these citizens are seeing good headlines about the economy. Mm-hmm. So there is a disconnect. So for people who watch the speech, most of those tend to be people who like the president anyway. They're going forward. And the Democrats are starting to lose ground in the congressional ballot. Republicans have made up considerable ground in just a month. I think what the Democrats could have done from a communication standpoint is just stood up and cheered and applauded and given a high fives to each other saying, we did this for you. Mm-hmm. We are happy to have helped you, President Trump, to inherit this great economy, and we are absolutely going to go forward to try to win back the working class.
And also take credit for some of these centrist and democratic ideas that he floated.
Sure, like paid family leave.
Yeah, I mean, there's some liberal stuff going in there, Kimberly. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, though, that Dana brings up a great point, which is that there was plenty there for them to say, hey, listen, we were contributory to this. We helped. We're trying to get the country to prosper as it relates to the economy as well and tax reform, et cetera. But instead, they chose to be partisan and not to be honest in terms of, okay, this is what's happened. This is what we feel we've tried to contribute. This is what is, in fact, good for the country. They did not want to even begrudgingly give kind of any credit or acknowledge any participation, because to give him any credit for honest-to-God achievements was too much for them to swallow.
Juan, you're batting cleanup here. Why does your side look like a bunch of sore losers? You get 10 seconds.
That's what I thought. Here we are on Fox. Let me just say.
We give you more time than anybody on the planet.
Let me just say, I'm so curious in listening because, for example, with the young man and the flags at the graves, right?
Right.
How can you guys not see that he's going after people who say, I'm having a legitimate protest about police brutality by refusing to stand at the national anthem? That's a choice that people are making. But what Trump has done is he has now demonized anybody who doesn't stand with this little boy who's bringing flags to a grave. How can you not do it? Well, I'll tell you how you can't do it, because you're so upset and you want America to know that there's police brutality in the world.
Right.
And similarly, let me just say, with regard to wages,
yes.
How can you not say, oh, Trump says, wages are up under me? Guess what? Wages have been rising since 2014.
You're doing that in the E-block.
I'm just telling you that there is so much here that Trump steers and distorts and twists, and you guys say, oh, he's patriotic, everything is great. I just think it's,
All right, but I just want to respond to that. I got to move on. You compare two ideas, okay? So in Trump's case, he has this young boy on to talk about this amazing thing he's doing. That is a well-articulated principle that he's espousing. He's showing this. The kneeling stuff was poorly articulated. Nobody really knew what it meant. People had to keep repeating it over and over again, and it became a question of patriotism, not a question of brutality. If they had done something if they'd gone to their police department and protested there, that would make sense. That's why you're comparing a well-articulated vision with one that was convoluted, and they're wrapping
It wasn't convoluted. You forget, Colin Kaepernick was very plain in saying why he was doing it.
Didn't work. I mean, it worked for a while.
I don't know if you think it worked or not, but I'm going to tell you, a lot of people are sensitive to the argument.
He was on the cover of GQ.
Police. Yeah, and a lot of people are more sensitive and more aware now because of Black Lives Matter and Colin Kaepernick.
Juan's defending Democrats not standing for the flag. Let him.
For the flag.
Also, Jesse pointed out to me on the sheet, it says that Democrats did not stand for Steve Scalise. I thought that I saw that.
I saw people
stand.
I don't know what's going on.
They might have applauded. They didn't stand. But this is where we are in America.
Yeah, this is grievance politics.
You get graded on where your posture.
I was sitting the entire time because I was, drinking wine on a train. Coming up, more from the State of the Union. The president's words on the grave threat of North Korea next.
North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear missiles could very soon threaten our homeland. Past experience has taught us that complacency and concessions only invite aggression and provocation. I will not repeat the mistakes of past administrations that got us into this very dangerous position.
One of the most powerful portions of the president's address last night was the time he devoted to the threat of North Korea. He highlighted the brutality of the regime with two very emotional stories, beginning with University of Virginia student Otto Warmbier.
After a shameful trial, the dictatorship sentenced Otto to 15 years of hard labor before returning him to America last June, horribly injured and on the verge of death. He passed away just days after his return. Otto's wonderful parents, Fred and Cindy Warmbier, are here with us tonight, along with Otto's brother and sister, Austin and Greta. Please.
The Warmbiers were just one of many stories that the president recounted last night that Kimberly helped us remember that 2017 was such a year full of news and a lot of tragedy and sad stories that have geopolitical consequences, like with North Korea.
Oh, absolutely. And just when you're reminded of what the president did to intervene to be able to get Otto home, and then sadly that he had passed away and the condition that he was in had, deteriorated so poorly. But at least the parents got to see their son. It was a very emotional moment. Everybody really, moved by it. How could you not be for the loss of a child like that you were trying so desperately to try to protect? This is one of the moments that I thought were really compelling during the speech, as well as the activists that were holding up the crutches. Was very powerful.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people felt that was one of the best parts of the speech. I think, Jesse, you were one of them. It was a North Korea defector. His name is Ji Seong-ho. This is somebody who was so desperate that he escaped from North Korea. He collapsed on the train tracks. He was exhausted from hunger. He was run over. He went through several surgeries. What he's holding up there that you can see on the screen are the crutches that he used as he basically recovered, and now he's here in America.
It brought a tear to my eye. It was an incredibly powerful moment. The North Korean defector, that's what real resistance looks like, not sitting on your hands and not clapping. That guy's a true hero, and it was amazing to see the reaction there. President Trump did a great job humanizing and personalizing his messages. The North Korean situation is obviously very tense right now, and I think the president's rhetoric and actions are working. The South Korean leader and the Japanese leader praised the president's actions and resolve just recently. The sanctions are working. The North Koreans just tried to open up some dialogue with the South. We're strategically leaking from generals war games about maybe decapitation strikes or preemptive action. And sanctions are really crippling Little Rocket Man's regime. I think they're really running out of gas. And this was the same chamber that W talked about the axis of evil. We liberated one, we paid off one. Little Rocket Man wants to get paid off, and I don't think Trump's ready to do business.
Juan, Brett Baer told me last night that in just the last year, in 2017, almost 1,200 North Koreans basically fled from the country, and they were the refugees, right? So they're desperate enough to leave their country to seek a better place, and the president was basically saying, we need to help them, but how we do that is going to be up to a lot of different considerations.
Yeah, I mean, it's not clear how we help them. So I don't know that we saw anything there that was helpful in that regard. But to me, the real news is here that you see people like South Korea say, we're going to march with the North Koreans. Or you see the man who was the likely nominee to be our ambassador say that he opposes the idea of a preemptory strike against North Korea. And then suddenly he's no longer in the running to be that ambassador in the Trump administration. I think this is, and of course we have China and the famous chocolate cake at Mar-a-Lago, where all of a sudden China has not been very helpful, and we're looking for other ways. So I think you can bring out and you can exploit people who are crying the Warmbier story. It's just tragic to have your child treated like that. But is this really about a reality TV show, or is it about a president trying to say, here is our policy as Americans and what we can do to combat this evil regime.
I don't think it's right for you to say that he's exploiting what happened with the Warm Beers one. I think that's pretty disrespectful.
Oh, yeah,
I don't
is.
think the
Well,
Warm
it's
Beers
intentional.
feel exploited. I think they're very happy that the commander-in-chief brought them there. So really
I think that is the
disrespectful
point, is
comment.
that the people that were there seemed very happy to be a part of the president's
Yeah,
talk.
it's the
They're not
it's the-
paid actors.
Yeah, yeah, it's the, you know, I always am, I'm not crazy about symbolic gestures, but these people, they deserve to be there. And we have to remember Otto because it's a reminder of who we are engaging with.
Yes.
We are engaging with a...
What an incredibly touching and memorable moment, Dana, to see that, the compassion and the service of an officer, and then really taking it into his own hands to do something more than just serve that day, but to take care
So
of
adoption is one of the most beautiful expressions of love, and it will be very interesting to see if there are increases in adoptions of babies that are born to opiate-addicted mothers in the future. That's very likely after something
Yes.
like this. The one thing I do wonder about is, so what are we going to do about the opiate epidemic? We talk a lot about how big a problem it is. The next move right now, apparently, is the Justice Department has a 45-day push to go against pushers, they call them. And that might be good. I don't think it's enough, so there's more to do.
Okay, Jesse, what did you make of this moment?
I thought it was another masterful use of personal stories to rally the country behind his agenda. We know the president's very affected by people and visuals and personal stories. We saw that in Syria when he was shown the images of the gas children that motivated him to send those Tomahawk missiles into Syria. And again, this was a speech about the people, for the people, and had more people, I believe, than most of these State of the Union addresses, and it was very effective.
Okay, Greg, what did you make?
Well, the story has, it kind of like unites so many different issues at once. You
Yes.
have drug abuse, you have adoption, you have the way law enforcement is portrayed on cable news, often negatively as something to be feared. And in this case, you see that it isn't. And it's all wrapped into one story, which is, I think, refreshing for people to see. I think for me, it's about the occupation that people have been denigrating. And it's not, and in this story, it's not about government doing good.
Right.
It's about an individual doing good. It must be hard for a lot of leftists in that room not to shout, "No justice, no peace," when they see a cop uniform.
Right, yeah, great point. The judge likes it. Okay, so Juan, when you see something like this, you have to be touched because this is a very serious epidemic in our country that so many families are facing, and loss of life and loved ones through opioid abuse and addiction. And when you see a situation like this, an officer coming in and taking a child, making a difference, it's a memorable and teachable moment for people to see at home.
No, I think it's an emotional moment that the president uses because, again, here's a situation, Kimberly, where you have an epidemic sweeping the country. An epidemic. 64,000 lives lost last year. And what do we see here? We see a situation in which the president is going after a new war on drugs instead of talking about how we can help and rehabilitate people, instead of talking about how we can heal people. He's saying, we're doing away with Obamacare, so all of your drug treatment, all of your rehab, not available to you. What about housing? What about, something like, contraception? Oh, no, not available. At some point, you got to stop and think. So this is a reality show, and we're supposed to all be crying for the policeman and the baby, but we lose track of our national policy and what's actually being done?
So you see an adoption of a child and you go, you should talk about contraception.
Right. Okay, that doesn't, yeah. Stay right there. The 5 State of the Union breakdown is going to continue next. Stay with us.